Next on Relevant Radio, your favorite weekly appointment. It's time for the Nazareth Project. Faith, marriage, and family talk for the everyday Catholic. With your host, Lydia Lococo.
Good morning, Milwaukee. I am Lydia Lococo, your host. Welcome to the Nazareth Project. Faith, marriage, and family talk for the everyday Catholic. I think that's you and me. I'm so happy that you're here. I wanted to get started with a great show, chat with you a little about a few things. I was recently visiting a friend whose son was getting married, and I found it strange, actually, how emotional I became standing and watching that bride come down the aisle. I'm the one who always questioned why in the world would they cry in front of weddings? I thought I'd share this little anecdote with you because I thought that was so strange that people would cry at weddings. It's a happy occasion, for example, and I don't know why people cry. And there I was, my eyes brimming up with tears, and I realized that sometimes it's easier to experience the passage of time and to experience true gratefulness when you have some distance to observe it. When you're in the middle, so to speak, of your own life, experiencing the changes day to day, it's all just so imperceptible. But from a distance, the change is dramatic, and you realize how fleeting our lives are, and not to get really mushy and maudlin at 9 a.m. in the morning, but how beautiful it all is. You also begin to see God's hand in things, and you realize that the minutia of every day, the millions of little decisions that you make are, believe it or not, working to further the greater plan of salvation. And I say that realizing that I'm speaking of all the sorrows as well as all the joys. So in my own life, it's easier to see the growth and change in those around me with my eyes dead set on the rearview mirror, looking back with a little distance. It was a great wedding. You'll be happy to know that I didn't smear my mascara entirely all over my face, but I did that day become one of those middle-aged women who cry at weddings. I actually have a point in this. I'm not just rambling, or it's not my usual rambling. I think about all this because I'm about to walk down memory lane here, and there you are, held captive in your car, washing your dishes, so I'm giving you fair warning that I'm going to wax nostalgic. I have a little distance, right? Are you ready? Once upon a time, in a land far, far away called the 1980s, I was, believe it or not, a young girl in college. And like many students, especially today, many today, I was privileged then, it was a big deal, to spend a semester abroad. And I found myself wearing a backpack and doing a fair amount of European travel. But my home base was Rome. I might have shared this story with you. And so I found myself in 1980 on the cobbled streets of the Eternal City, trying to synthesize my study of the Confessions of St. Augustine with my art history class, and experiencing all these sights and sounds firsthand. And he was there. You know him. You know the guy I'm talking about, him. He had just turned 60, virile, handsome pontiff who would come out at those Wednesday audiences. This was not the, elderly and severe Pope Paul VI, who was kind of scary for me as a youngster, but rather a very radiant, is kind of the only word I can think of, and vibrant and joy-filled Pope who strode out into the audiences, anxious to share with the world a message that he couldn't contain. And as you also know, he had been a poet and an actor. And when he became Pope, he was, at that time, the youngest named in the 20th century. He was a phenomenologist, and that was something that was really new then. No one knew what that meant. We only knew Thomism pretty much, and not this different perspective philosophically. And he would later tell us to be not afraid as we sought to bring the gospel to the world in new ways new in ardor, method, and expression. So all of those Wednesday audiences that I was there that fall, he spoke about love and Genesis and human sexuality and shame and all of it. And I can tell you, I'm not revisioning this. This is true. It was electrifying. I had never heard anything like that before in my life. And it so changed me that I went back home to become the only theology major in my entire graduating class, writing my thesis on his work, Love and Responsibility. because you see, I couldn't actually write it on what we now call Theology of the Body, because those are the addresses he was in the midst of giving. Like I said, it's easier to appreciate the hand of God and the passage of time when your eyes are fixed on the rearview mirror. Today's guest spends his life working to spread the message of those 180-something Wednesday audiences. He's a gift to the church. I am so happy to share with you my interview with him in our studio last week. His name is Brian Butler, and he spoke with me about the theology of the body, why it's important, and how we ourselves can spread the message. We're going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, I want to share with you my chat with Brian Butler. You're listening to The Nazareth Project on Relevant Radio, faith, marriage, and family talk for the everyday Catholic. We'll be right back.
If you can picture it, American Landscape can make it happen. You can rest assured that the haven you have in mind can happen with American Landscape. Transform an ordinary yard into an outdoor living space everyone will love. Since 1973, American Landscape has been serving residential and commercial property owners with certified professionals. Go to relevantradio.com, keyword landscape. relevantradio.com, keyword landscape.
More and more people are talking about Lydia Lococo's Nazareth Project on Relevant Radio. If you're a business owner, your message could be airing right here, right now. With 2 stations now serving the Archdiocese and covering all of southeast Wisconsin, your message will be heard by thousands of potential customers. Contact is quick. Send an email to businessbuilding@relevantradio.com. Build awareness, brand your business, and drive traffic. businessbuilding@relevantradio.com.
We're back with the Nazareth Project on Relevant Radio. Here's your host, Lydia Lococo.
Welcome back to the Nazareth Project. I'm your host, Lydia Lococo, and we're in our studio today with someone who is on the phone from many miles away in Louisiana. We're happy today to have Brian Butler. Brian, welcome.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Great to be with you.
Brian is the executive director of Dumb Ox Ministries. Remember that name. It's a nonprofit organization. It's dedicated to something very important, chastity and vocation formation for teens and young adults. Brian has a bachelor's in communication, and you all know that I always say evangelization takes a lot of knowledge in the area of marketing and communication, so that's very important. But he also has a master's degree in theology from Notre Dame Seminary School of Theology. He has over 15 years of youth ministry experience, and he currently coordinates vocation formation initiatives for youth in the Diocese of Houma-Thibodaux and in the Archdiocese of New Orleans. He and his wife, Lisa, reside in the Archdiocese of New Orleans with their 4 children. I'm a Shreveport, Louisiana native, so I'm excited to welcome Brian. So, Brian, you're coming up here to visit us soon. Is that correct?
Very excited to be coming up there soon. Actually, it's going to be my first time in Milwaukee that I can recall, and certainly the first time that we've brought the message of the theology of the body to that city from our ministry and from Ascension Press, so we're very excited to come.
I want to share with our listeners, and we will give this information again at the end of the show, and we will post it on our website. Brian Butler will be coming to St. Charles Parish in Heartland August 7th through 8th. They are taking reservations now. He will be doing the middle school training on August 7th and a training for high school ministry on August 8th. These are pretty much all-day trainings. This is a once-in-a-lifetime, I tell you, chance to get to spend so much time with Brian, who is at the top of his game in proclaiming that great message of the theology of the body. We're going to talk to him about it. I just want to also give you the date of February 20th in 2015, which seems a long way away, but that is a day set aside for school teachers and parish staff. That will be at the Cousins Center here down on St. Francis on Lake Drive, and he's going to do an all-day kind of middle school, high school combined that day. You can go to thenazarethproject.com to register for that. All right, Brian, I know you do this for a living. Let's say there's a listener and they're like, theology of the what? So why don't you give me your elevator speech on what is the theology of the body?
Well, St. Anselm taught us that theology is faith-seeking understanding. And so if we look at our faith desiring to understand more about who God is and who we're called to be, theology of the body is a set of teachings from John Paul II, St. John Paul II, given from 1979 to 1984, that penetrates into the deepest questions about our sexual identity, of who we are as men and women, created in the image and likeness of God. And then once we understand that identity, created in freedom, fallen but redeemed, yet called towards an eternity, towards a final union, a consummation, even a marriage between ourselves as members of the bodies of Christ and Christ in heaven. That's our full identity. When we understand our full identity, then we're able to understand how to live that out. And so that set of teachings really penetrated into helping us to understand more about God through looking at the human person in and through masculinity and femininity, the beauty of the complementarity of the sexes, and the call for the two to become one flesh. So it's a deep set of teachings that was given, roughly 130 talks that John Paul gave, and then a few more that he didn't ever give in public, but that were found in the Vatican archives. And they're now compiled into one book that's quite a hefty work of theology. And our task has been to try to break that down and to make it accessible for the layman, and even not only accessible for adults and teachers, but also accessible for middle schoolers and teenagers and young adults. And so it's been a great gift to our humanity to be able to aid us in a counter-sexual revolution, the truth and meaning of our human sexuality as God intended it to be.
If someone wanted to purchase, we'll just start here. If someone wants to read the original texts of those talks that were given, what edition do you prefer? If someone's going to go on Amazon.com. Sure.
That's a good question. 2006 was when Dr. Mikhail Wallstein published the latest translation of the Theology of the Body under the title Man and Woman He Created Them, A Theology of the Body. And that's published by Pauline Media. And so I know that there are in various parts of the world different translations now that are being promulgated, but that's, in my understanding, really the definitive translation at this point.
I'm glad you said that because I like that one also. And then I do think people are a little cloudy on it. So these are these original texts from St. John Paul II, but they are very dense. They're nice to have, though, as a reference. And then if you wanted to read a more manageable translation of this, we'll go all the way down. The next level down, what would you recommend?
Probably Theology of the Body Explained by Christopher West. It's between 400 and 500 pages still, but it takes each section and goes through it in detail, really looking at the different words that are being spoken and why they're being spoken. I would say that the introduction that Dr. Mikhail Wallstein gives in his to the Theology of the Body text from John Paul is 130 pages itself, and that is I think that's a must-read to really open your eyes to be able to read everything that John Paul wrote.
All right, and then at the more basic level, the publishing house of Ascension Press has the rights and publishes texts for grade schools and high schools. Is that correct?
Correct.
And people can, I would assume they would have access. They can buy those directly, and they come in kits, and you can go on the Ascension Press website. I know people homeschool. They might need them for various reasons. Let's say they're a catechist in their parish, and they say, we don't use these texts, but they could purchase them themselves and augment their own teaching. So I always like to give people the range of different publications.
Yeah, absolutely. TOBforteens.com is the hub website for those programs, TOBforteens.com. And our team put together first the high school edition first, which is 12 chapters and really kind of, as an overview and an introduction, specifically zoning in on two themes that you mentioned that are part of our ministry's mission, which is vocation and chastity. And it's important to recognize that theology of the body itself is much larger than those two themes. But when we look at teenagers and what ails them and what they need today, I think those are two main areas that they need a lot of help in, to have an understanding of their identity and a firm grip on how to live that out in chastity, and then to be able to prepare themselves to do so through a particular vocation for the rest of their lives. So those are the two ways that we did kind of focus in a little bit more in both programs. The middle school program that we put together that's meant for 6th through 8th graders is definitely more foundational. It's slower to ramp up towards sexuality. It does get specific on those things in chapters 5 and 6, but there's a greater foundation being laid there to be able to allow for that conversation when it's time for it to happen.
And when you come to St. Charles in Heartland on August 7th and 8th, and I hope a lot of people are going to register, there is a chance, I know Tara or someone from Ascension Press makes available the Ascension Press kits in the back. Is that correct? Can they purchase them that day?
They can purchase them that day, and then actually we usually have a special that happens at those conferences where if you have any bulk orders that you want to make, you can get them at 20% off that day. And if we run out of anything, you can order it that day and not have to pay any shipping, and handling. So it is a great day to get a lot of resources that you want, to be able to ask your priest or your principal or your DRE for permission, knowing that you're going to have a chance at getting some great resources to stack up your library, to be able to have at your discretion to use, whether it's in your own classroom, but really also to support the other adults around you that are trying to do the same ministry. Those two programs we mentioned have 4 components each: a very dynamic DVD program, a leader's guide, a student guide, and a parent's guide. It's very important we remember that we have to keep parents as the primary educators of their children and give them the tools that they need to be the lead in this particular area of their children's lives.
Let me ask you just a few questions. I just think these are interesting questions. What if someone says, a listener out there is thinking about theology of the body and says, I'm old school. I'm not in favor of all this new theology. I mean, I've actually heard this. You would answer what?
Well, I would say, are you Catholic? And if they say they're Catholic, then I would hope they'd be open to this teaching, because this is a very wonderful teaching that does a couple of things. One, it does take some of the old school teachings, so to speak, if you want to couch it that way, and synthesizes them. Synthesizes the beautiful things that the church has taught over many, many years into one package. But then John Paul also offers some new advancements of his own, some new doctrinal sort of developments of his own that are very, very important, and really shedding a whole lot of light not only on the area of sexuality, but on our entire faith.
Really, the anthropology of the person.
Recently said in that introduction to the Theology of the Body that reading this text is like a John Pauline lens through which to reread the entire catechism. So it's got a lot of tentacles to it that I would hope people would give it a chance before judging it by its cover.
Do you get the criticism, or I've heard the criticism, let's say, that it doesn't deal perhaps with the issue of concupiscence strongly enough? Do you think that's true?
No, I would disagree with that. I think that John Paul is very specific in both of his major works that are, a lot of times when we speak of the theology of the body, those of us in this field also kind of link to it another work that John Paul published that came out of 2 years' worth of lectures that he did at the University of Lublin in Poland in the late 1950s. And that work is called Love and Responsibility. And he certainly deals with the movements of sexual desire and of the possibility of what we're talking about when we say sexual concupiscence there, and the difference between that and carnal desire. What's the difference between that and the spontaneous sensual reaction, which is something that just happens in the human person that is a very good thing and it has nothing tinted about it. So he breaks those things down in Love and Responsibility and then takes it to another level inside of the Theology of the Body, where he engages us to understand our identity and then to be able to be watchmen of the movements of our hearts and to really pay attention to the motivations for the desires that we have, and to certainly keep ourselves out of sin's way and keep ourselves away from temptation, but also to submit that concupiscence and to submit those temptations to Christ for him to redeem them, knowing that the cross is efficacious in redeeming every single part of us. And in a particular way, we're ailing right now from sexual disordered desire. We're ailing from lust in a pornographic culture that makes over $100 billion per year on pornography, which is more than the NFL, Major League Baseball and NBA combined. So we have a really big need here that I think the Holy Spirit gave us this particular work with John Paul at this particular time to help us with it.
Yes, I think everyone who's got any degree of self-reflection understands this is the question of our age, certainly of the time that we're put in the economy of salvation, where we're put today. These are the questions. We're so grateful that you are generous with the Lord in responding to his call, because I know that, initially this is exciting and it's fun to do this work, but when it gets down to the nitty-gritty of doing work in the church and taking this all over the country and leaving children and wives, it's a lot of sacrifice. So thank you for all that you do, Brian, sincerely from the bottom of my heart. It's very important, and it's an ever-new message, that's for sure.
I sincerely thank you for that, Lydia, and ask for your prayers and for all of the prayers of your listeners.
Well, we're certainly going to promo this upcoming training. All right, listeners, let's get your pens out. Brian Butler is coming to St. Charles in Heartland on August 7th and 8th. This is a chance for you, for a very reasonable price, to be trained on August 7th and 8th, either in middle school or for high schoolers. There will be materials available there for purchase, and you can contact the parish for registration, or you could contact, you can go to thenazarethproject.com, and we will have that information. On your calendars, perhaps you have a teacher, and you've always wanted her to learn more about the theology of the body, but she never has time, and her teacher conference doesn't have it, and you don't understand how busy the teachers are, and you can say, guess what I found out? Your superintendent has made possible that you can go to this training. So on February 20th, 2015, we're going to have Brian Butler here. If you have anybody on your pastoral staff, any teacher, any catechist, we're going to welcome them. Again, go to thenazarethproject.com. So thank you, Brian, for talking with us today, and we look forward to continued success for you, and you are going to be in our prayers. Listeners, we're going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, it will be time for our mailbag. This is Lydia Lococo, and you are listening to The Nazareth Project, faith, marriage, and family talk for the everyday Catholic. We'll be right back.
If you can picture it, American Landscape can make it happen. You can rest assured that the haven you have in mind can happen with American Landscape. Transform an ordinary yard into an outdoor living space everyone will love. Since 1973, American Landscape has been serving residential and commercial property owners with certified professionals. Go to relevantradio.com, keyword landscape. relevantradio.com, keyword landscape.
If you've just started listening to AM 1640, welcome to the new station, covering all the counties of the Archdiocese. If you're a business owner, your message could be airing right here, right now. With 2 stations delivering the Nazareth Project and other great shows all weekend, your message will be heard by thousands of potential customers. Build awareness, brand your business, and drive traffic. Contact is easy. Send an email to businessbuilding@relevantradio.com.
We are back with the Nazareth Project on Relevant Radio and your host, Lydia Lococo.
Welcome back to the Nazareth Project, faith, marriage, and family talk for the everyday Catholic. It's time for our mailbag. I think we have time for one question. This is kind of personal, but I will answer it. Lydia, a personal question for you. You mentioned on your show during an interview with Barbara Lyons, Executive Director of Wisconsin Right to Life, that you're a breast cancer survivor. How did friends like Barbara help, as you said, quote, walk you through, unquote, this time in your life? That's a very good question. It's a personal question, but I kind of, as I get further and further away from my experience of going through the treatment for breast cancer, it's easier to talk about it. I think it's really important, no matter what experiences we've had. You might be an adult child of divorce. You might have had some loss of a sibling. You might have cancer. There are certain traumas in our lives or experiences where it's helpful to talk to somebody who is, in a sense, been to war and come back. Because when you've been to war in that way, sometimes you have a hard time connecting with people who haven't been there. And that phrase was given to me by a woman who lost a child, who lost an infant. And she said, I feel like I've been to a war that no one else went to, and I've come back, and now I can't. It's hard to talk with people. Barbara Lyons was a huge help because she was someone who had enough years and distance from her experience to be able to really mentor and walk with me. And she had been through it and was a survivor and is a brave and courageous woman. And I want to be that for other people. So if we have any breast cancer survivors or people who are going through treatment right now, I would love to speak with you at any time. Thanks for the question. Now, before we are done with our mailbag, there are a few things I want to PR. We get all kind of information in our email box, and it's exciting stuff that's coming up. Registration, for example, is open right now for Encounter. That's our Steubenville Young Adult Conference. It's going to be November 8th, 2014. Register at arisemissions.org. That has an S at the end. arisemissions.org, the Steubenville Young Adult Conference. That's for 18 years and over. And another thing we have for young adults is a young adult retreat, Finding Faith in a Busy Lifestyle, hosted at the St. Vincent Pallotti Retreat Center in Elkhorn. It's August 8th through 9th, hosted by Catholic Financial Life and Lake Country Young Adult Ministries. You can find that link on thenazarethproject.com. And that's it for our mailbag. Thanks so much. And now it's time for What Really Matters. What really matters is taking the time once in a while to look in the rearview mirror. And that's meaningful whether we're talking about the universal church or about the very minute particulars of our own lives. Life is beautiful, and the Lord does weave people and events, sufferings and losses, and good and beautiful times together to bring us, hopefully, in the end, to Him. So maybe this week, take a few minutes to step back, go and dig up some old pictures, contact your old neighbor, ask how our kid is doing. Distance gives us the perspective to see His hand in our lives, and taking a look back helps us to keep in front of us what really matters. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Nazareth Project, Faith, Marriage, and Family Talk for the Everyday Catholic. Stay in touch with us on Facebook, Twitter, and on our website, thenazarethproject.com. Remember to call me and leave messages for our mailbag. The number is 414-758-2241. That's 414-758-2241. Next week's show is Patricia Jessup and Pat Parks. They're going to talk to us about the Working Boys Center. Thanks for chatting with me this morning. I'm Lydia Lococo. We'll see you next Friday. God bless your day.
You've been listening to the Nazareth Project on Relevant Radio. Tune in next Friday morning at 9 for more faith, marriage, and family talk with Lydia. And for more information about today's guests and topics, visit thenazarethproject.com.